All right, folks, week 1, lesson 1, here we go. So for every topic, I'll start with some general outcomes, goals, or can-do statements. These are things that you should be able to do after reviewing all of the week's content. So it's worth it to use these outcomes as ways to measure your progress. So by the end of the week, you should be able to explain the major levels of organization in the human body, briefly describe all of the organ systems and the major functions of each, identify some major body processes and how the body keeps everything in balance or homeostasis, describe the anatomical position, all the planes, as well as the directions that we use when describing the body. You should be able to divide the body into cavities and tell me what organs are in each. And finally, you should be able to list the organ systems and tell me their functions. So along with the objectives, I'll also give you a list of terms that will be used in this week's content. You'll also find these on the last page of the textbook in the chapter, along with all the definitions. So since it's the first week, I'll go easy on you guys and I'll give you the first 3 terms. Anatomy is the study of structure of the body, physiology is how the body functions, and pathophysiology is the changes that happen to the body when we get ill or injured. Now, since this is an anatomy and physiology course, you can expect that we'll spend most of our time on the first 2, but there will be some discussion on diseases and how they change the structure and function of the body. So in layman's terms, if you know anatomy, you would know, say, the parts of a truck. If you knew physiology, you would know how a truck is supposed to work, and if you knew pathophysiology, you know how to fix a truck. Or probably more accurately, what a truck looks like when it breaks. If you're taking this course with a career in healthcare in mind, this is your first step in treating patients. You know how the body works when it's fine, and you'll be a lot easier to fix it when it's broken. Quick plug for the scientific method. How do we know that what we're learning is accurate? Well, anatomy, like any science, follows the scientific method. Step 1 is we observe something happening in the world around us. We make a guess as to why that's happening, called a hypothesis. We figure out a test or an experiment that helps prove our hypothesis, and then we run it and evaluate the results. Good scientists will throw in an extra step of checking for biases, things that may mess up our results or keep them from being accurate. The more or better your experiments you perform, the closer your hypothesis get to being accepted as true, which we would call a law. All right, back to the anatomy. So the human body isn't just one solid piece of tissue, obviously. It's made up of a bunch of smaller organs, and they all work together in different systems to complete particular jobs. And these organs are made up of groups of tissues, and these tissues are made up of groups of cells, and these cells are made up of groups of organelles, all the way down to the chemical and atomic level. We'll get into the chemistry and cell biology next week, and then every week after, we'll look at roughly 2 body systems and see all of the organs that make up those systems and what their functions are in terms of the body as a whole. But before we get into that, we need to have a map. So this is the anatomical position. Facing forward, hands to the sides, palms up, feet shoulder width apart. This is like our true north when we're talking about the body. It's a standard position so that when I describe an injury, illness, or a part of the body in relation to some other part, the person that I'm talking to knows what I'm talking about. So now that we have our map laid out in the right way, let's get the directions clear. Just like sailors use terms like port and starboard to denote directions, we'll use specific terms to describe body parts and how they relate to one another. So first up, lateral is away from the midline. Medial is towards it. Superior is up towards the head, and inferior is down. Now this one's tricky. Superior and inferior work when we're talking about the head and the torso. But when we talk about the arms and legs, we need to use distal and proximal. Proximal means towards the point of attachment, like the shoulders or the hips, and distal means away. Think distal is towards digits. It might help. Anterior means front, posterior means back. Last thing I'll touch on in this lesson is the planes of the body. If we were to divide the body into 2, say front and back, we would be dividing it in what's called the frontal plane. If we split it from left to right, so this way, that will be the sagittal plane. Top and bottom, so cutting it here, up and down, that will be the transverse plane. And if we divided it on an angle, that would be the oblique plane.